Good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Rosa Cabrera, Director of the UIC UIC Latino Cultural Center, the LCC. Thank you for joining us in this virtual space for Climates of Inequality. This fall, we're hosting the 5th season of Climates of Inequality public presentation, highlighting local and national leaders working on environmental and climate justice. Guest speakers have been sharing frameworks and solutions to address the disproportionate impacts of climate change and environmental harms inflicting on historically and currently excluded community, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, undocumented, and low-income earners. Climates of Inequality is a project of the Humanities Action Lab, which also involves a traveling exhibition telling the stories of 22 communities in the US, Puerto Rico, Colombia, and Mexico. They have been burdened by environmental injustices for decades now. It includes the story of Little Village, developed by the LCC with community partners Alianza Americas and Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, known as El Vejo. Last year, we expanded the Chicago story to feature other sacrifice zones in the city of Chicago, and a portion of the exhibition is currently being hosted by Neighborhoods for Environmental Justice in McKinley Park. I don't know if we can put in the chat more information about the exhibition. I know we have a flyer somewhere, but if we cannot put it on the chat, maybe we can give this information to some of you if you wish later. The presentation today will focus on one of Chicago's sacrifice zones, where Pilsen Environmental Rights and Reform Organization, known as PERRO, is leading efforts to tackle the environmental hazards caused by Sims metal, a polluter in the Pilsen community. These efforts range from calling the city to enact a stricter oversight, data transparencies, and the potential closure of this facility to revitalize green spaces along the Pilsen Industrial Corridor, just to name a few of the strategies that they're using. Before I introduce our guest speakers, a few shout-outs are in order, including our partners, Alianza Americas and Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, for their ongoing collaboration over the past years, and to the Humanities Action Lab for sustaining this program. To our co-sponsors at UIC, the Department of Latin American and Latino Studies, Freshwater Lab, Great Cities Institute, Las Canas Project, Museum and Exhibition Studies, Social Justice Initiative, and Sustainability at UIC. Also to the student panelists in my environmental justice class, who will facilitate a short conversation with our guest speaker after the presentation. They are Ashley Cruz, Rachel Burkhan, Violeta Romero, and Jimena Ramirez. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, who we're very excited to have with us today. Citlalli Trujillo is a first-generation college student with a bachelor's in biochemistry from UIC and currently completing a master's in the School of Public Health at UIC. She serves as the president of PERRO, Pilsen Environmental Rights and Reform Organization, where she's activating her passion for and commitment to environmental justice and water rights. Many of us know Citlalli through her work with the Freshwater Lab and its digital storytelling project on the Chicago River. Now, please join me in welcoming Citlalli.
Thank you, Rosa. Should I begin sharing my video or my presentation? Sorry.
Yes, you can begin sharing, Citlalli.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Does that look good? Great. Thank you. Okay, so hi, I'm Citlalli Trujillo, the president of the Pilsen Environmental Rights and Reform Organization. And today I'll talk a little bit about PERRO, our key campaign around Sims Metals, and then other forms of advocacy, including reclaiming green spaces. So that works. Okay, nice. So just quickly here, I'll introduce PERRO. PERRO is a volunteer-driven grassroots organization founded in 2004 to fight the disproportionate amount of pollution in the Pilsen neighborhood. And our mission is to advocate and strive for environmental justice to make Pilsen and nearby impacted communities around us cleaner and healthier places to live, work, and raise families. And our vision is a community that lives in harmony with air, water, land, and the living world, democratic and economic empowerment, and ensuring equitable access to housing, food, green spaces, and meaningful employment. And just pictured here are some of our volunteers, including 2 co-founding members. PERRO addresses several environmental issues, including air pollution, soil pollution, and remediation, water pollution as well. PERRO has, as part of a coalition, advocated for the closure of the Fisk and Crawford coal plant, the 2 large sources of air pollution, and also spent over a decade advocating for the EPA to investigate H. Kramer, that is a brass and bronze foundry company, where they basically discovered that there were really high levels of lead in the soil in residential and public areas. And they were mandated to install new emission controls and upgrade their facility. They also pushed for successful soil remediation across all these residential, private, and public properties, and then also successfully engaged the EPA to install a live air monitor at Perez Elementary School that still remains active today and has been crucial in the Sims Metals campaign as well. So here are just some pictures that I found in our drive. So this leads me to our current campaign, which is Sims Metals. So Sims is our current focus, and just noting that, as we talk about Sims Metals campaign, we haven't, achieved like our desired outcome yet, which to us is, the closure of Sims and denying the denial of their permit by the city. Their large recycling facility permit, which allows them to operate in Chicago. And this campaign has left, many members and community members also feeling frustrated, but we remain committed to finding alternative ways to address this issue and protect the community. So a little bit about Sims. Sims is a metal recycling facility located in the Pilsen Industrial Corridor. The site processes end-of-life vehicles, appliances, and other scrap metals using a hammer mill shredder. And Sims has been operating in the neighborhood for over 30 years. In 2021, the Illinois Attorney General sued Sims Metals for violating air pollution regulations. So this was after they applied for an operating permit. They're applying for a new one. Their emissions test revealed that their shredder's capture efficiency was below 50%, so far below the required 81%. Sims was mandated to install new air pollution control equipment and seek permits at both the city and state levels. And even the Illinois EPA and Attorney General emphasized that Sims operations posed a public health risk by exposing the community to uncontrolled emissions. So PERRO opposes the continuation of Sims operations in Pilsen, and we're advocating for denial of their city permit. Without it, they will not be able to obtain the required state permit that prevents them from continuing their operations legally. Just to highlight, this a troubling comparison is like kind of the now closed General Iron facility in Lincoln Park. So despite Sims emissions being 9 times higher than those of General Iron was shut down after 2 years. I forget, sorry, I don't know where the 2 years comes from, but they were just shut down after a series of regulatory and operational issues. So this just kind of like shows like this disparity in Pilsen and Lincoln Park. It's environmental racism because like in Pilsen, you have predominantly Latina and low-income residents that have this shredder that continues to operate. But in Lincoln Park, concerns are raised there, and they received more stricter environmental enforcement that led to the shutdown of Lincoln Park. So just an example I have on the next slide is a fire that happened at Sims Metals in 2023, so just last year. And in 2022, there were 2 explosions at the general iron facility that led to a shutdown. And this here was documented in 2023, but the facility itself has not shut down, and actually wasn't really addressed by the city or anything like that. Or, Sims put out a statement, but it wasn't addressed in their permit or anything like that. Sorry, just cooking some water. So there are just many problems, with Sims Metals. First, it's proximity to vulnerable sites. So this facility is located at the intersection of Blue Island and Paulina, less than 700 feet away from Benito Juarez High School. We also have Whittier Elementary and Cristo Rey Jesuit School, the Jesuit High School. It's located near parks, for example, the Canal Port Riverwalk Park, which is one of the few green spaces on the southwest side. You also have bus stops located nearby, really busy intersections and high pedestrian traffic. There's like a lot of heavy truck activity on Ashland, Cermak, and Blue Island that kind of adds to, more air pollution from the emissions. Sims shreds, shredder releases particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, lead, nickel, manganese, which are all pose serious health risks that may not be apparent right away and are not quite fully understood. And then a significant issue too is limited public access and education on emissions data. So I have this picture here that I took, or a kind of screenshot from the US EPA website. So while the EPA does make, the emissions data available online, which was part of Sims emissions control, they were to install air monitors to monitor the emissions more effectively. It's only accessible through these like Excel files that are just difficult to understand, if you don't have any technical knowledge or any knowledge on these pollutants and what the numbers mean. As you can see, this report also shows pollutants as like not detected. So this can kind of indicate that the monitoring equipment may not be sophisticated enough to capture all pollutants accurately and detect them. But yet they're using this data to make, decisions on the permit. I wanted to also highlight this virtual community engagement room that was kind of published after PERRO kind of, began, raising noise and advocating for Sims Metals closure. They also ramped up like their efforts to kind of increase like their presence in the community. So they began like sending like mailers like this one, like hi neighbors, and framing themselves as good neighbors that are committed to environmental responsibility. And yeah, up here is like their community engagement room, which is like a platform kind of meant to present, their operations in like a favorable light, but also as a way to like share like results that they've gotten. But I encourage you guys to check this out if you have the time. But they kind of, a lot of this emphasizes like positive air quality outcomes, how they're really good neighbors, they provide our community with jobs, and just suggesting that, well, kind of telling us, they're telling us we're in compliance. However, even though, we do see that their emissions, so the US EPA kind of did publish, this was, I think, earlier this year. They kind of published that, their emissions don't exceed regulatory thresholds. but they are emitting these pollutants into the air, right? Like lead, manganese, the ones I touched on earlier, and PM10. But even studies have shown that chronic low level exposures to metals like lead, chromium, and manganese can pose significant health risk. Lead, there's no safe level of lead exposure. It can cause neurological damage. We know that manganese exposure is linked to increased asthma rates and other respiratory conditions. And yeah, just noting that SIMS has been operating in the community for over 30 years, and it's between 2018 and now is when they just began implementing these emission controls and stuff. And also just for me, the fact that the fence line air monitors that they have can still detect these metals suggests that SIMS is still not, effectively eliminating all the emissions the way they should. So now kind of positioning us, to where are we now? SIMS metals facilities like worldwide, not just in Pilsen, but have like a history of regulatory noncompliance. They have a history of fires, of contaminating the water, contaminating the air, which is why PERRO is advocating, for their denial of their large recycling facility permit from CDPH, so the Chicago Department of Public Health. And again, this permit would allow SIMS to continue operating in Pilsen. PERRO members have actively attended public meetings. We've, hosted our own meetings, educating people in different steps of the process that SIMS has had to take, right, such as applying for the permit, installing the emission controls, making the data public, and voicing our concerns to, our regulatory agencies, the CDPH, writing public comments. But even despite these persistent advocacy efforts, emails, requests for inspections, even when we see unusual stuff, the city seems likely to approve SIMS permit to continue operating in Pilsen. And again, the EPA claims that community members are not expected to experience long-term or short-term health effects directly from SIMS operations, even though the EPA monitors, sorry, not the EPA, the monitors that SIMS has at the facility still show even spikes in these pollutants, such as PM10. That's a big one. It's a pollutant that exacerbates asthma. Despite these spikes, they argue that these levels are not high enough to warrant regulatory action. Another thing too is that SIMS has not published their air monitoring data since May 2024. So we're kind of missing like all this summer data. And they also have not published data from the PRES EPA monitor that's meant to monitor lead, manganese, nickel. They have not published that since February 2024. So this kind of makes it difficult for us to kind of provide even public comments on their current permit application. And without access to updated emissions data, we're not able to fully understand the extent of their impact on the community, or even challenge, things, their claims effectively. So yeah, this is this a screenshot I took from the US EPA website. You guys can look up, some months of data that they have on SIMS, and it kind of explain, oh, they're not, we didn't find any levels that were, significant. And they also publish this on their website as well. So right now, SIMS is kind of, or the city is actually allowing community members to submit public comments on SIMS, basically kind of like final, I would say, yeah, it's kind of like one more chance to kind of publicly comment on SIMS metals application, because so once they submitted the application, basically they were allowed to install new emission controls. They're basically allowed to kind of put themselves back into compliance with the city to for the city to be able to approve their permit, so then they can get, you know, their state permit approved. And they did highlight some deficiencies with the application, such as like not having a noise monitoring plan, lack of information around like their shredder fluff waste that gets generated from shredding the metal. And also I think a noise plan and odor plan. So after they submitted those deficiencies, which was submitted these last couple of months, now they're able to like kind of proceed with like the next application step. And the city basically saying like, yes, they have all their materials, they're good to go, and now we can review the application like without missing anything crucial. So that is kind of why we say, you know, I mean, even at the community meetings that we've had with CDPH, even they have told us, you know, once they do have all their materials, they don't have deficiencies in the application, we have to approve their permit. So what can we do, right? What can we do? We'll continue our advocacy against SIMS metals. So this means, you know, still continuing reporting on our end when we see unusual things. We do report stuff like, you know, like dust clouds. If we see, you know, it's really hard to see stuff, you know, what's happening at this facility, but even other community members have seen like another kind of type of like shear kind of shredder thing that's at SIMS metals that needs a permit, that needs to be, you know, regulated because it also generates emissions. So just doing that, pressuring, you know, them to conduct more inspections, host, you know, public meetings to keep the community informed, submitting public comments whenever possible. And because SIMS still needs their state operating permit, because the state would not consider their permit application until they had the proper city permit. This also is a good opportunity to make our demands known, you know, at the state level to the governor. So there's still, you know, ways to continue advocating, even if, you know, the city does end up giving them their permit. You know, there's still things we can do on our end. And there's also other forms of advocacy that I'll also be talking about, which also leads me to my next slide. So this, there's around SIMS Metals, which is located in the Pilsen Industrial Corridor, there are green spaces. We do have green spaces around there that a lot of community members are not really aware about because they're kind of like really inaccessible, they're hidden, really hard to get to. So one of the ways that, you know, we can continue, you know, advocating, you know, for more enforcement and regulation of these sites is kind of reclaiming these green spaces near the Pilsen Industrial Corridor. So PERRO was actually just awarded a Green Latinos grant. So this is like an urban greening initiative. So Green Latinos allocated money in grants to kind of increase, revitalize, and renovate green spaces in urban Latina neighborhoods across LA, Albuquerque, and Chicago. And PERRO was awarded money to renovate Canal Origins Park, which is right across from SIMS Metals. And this effort will basically integrate marginalized voices into, you know, environmental climate justice movement and help communities like Pilsen access, you know, funding for urban greening initiatives to basically bridge the nature gap. So yeah, and the goals of this initiative are to expand and restore green spaces that can basically improve public health, environmental quality as well. So the reason why I just think it's like really important that we begin, you know, reclaiming these spaces as our own as well is that there's a lot of development happening around these parks that kind of aren't community led. It is like city property and stuff, but it's a lot of development happening by the companies that are already around there or for example, I don't know if anyone heard about the Damon Silos, because the Damon Silos is also around that park. But that was bought by the owner of Matt Asphalt. And he, Matt Asphalt is a non-polluter in McKinley Park. So just like knowing that, these like our green spaces are also being bought up by like polluters and developers is also just very concerning. And also by revitalizing these areas, we're kind of aiming to shift from like a polluting industrial corridor into a healthier one. By creating, more accessible green spaces near the industrial sites and increasing our presence, right? Because we want to challenge the dominance of pollution in these areas. And also, green spaces provide multiple benefits, right? You increase the amount of trees, you're improving the air quality, you're getting people to come out more, see these spaces. And also kind of, we want to, shift the power back to the community and ensure that the land serves us, the people, and not the industries that endanger our public health. So this is a little bit about some pictures of Canal Origins Park. This is a Bubbly Creek right here. If anyone knows a little bit about Bubbly Creek, used to be more polluted waterway. When the stockyards kind of used to like dump all like the carcasses and animal waste and all blood in Bubbly Creek. But there's groups that are working to kind of restore that part of the waterway. It's a lot healthier than it used to be. And then there's also the South Branch, and then on the left is where you get the sanitary and ship canal. This is actually a boathouse that's across Canal Origins Park. That's a little controversial in my opinion, because it's not really like for the people. There's actually outside groups that come and use the boathouse for rowing. But let's say like me, as part of PERRO, wanted to like have a community meeting there. The rowers would get priority over like community members. So that's a little controversial. These are some neighbors I met around the area that I kind of met one day when I was walking around. I came across these parks because I was this was during the pandemic, and I was really trying to just reconnect with nature. And they, took me around, talked to me about, how they hang out here, and just, share with me just, some history of what they do and stuff, how they hang out. But at this park, there's also like narratives, because this park is actually it marks the origin point of the Illinois-Michigan Canal, and later now this Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal, and that really played a crucial role in like Chicago's growth, right? It helped us like with trade, and basically resulted in the growth of Chicago. Chicago would not be where it is without these canals. But as you can see, like all this is like very deteriorated at the park. They tell, the story. Even there's also ceramic like friezes that an artist, Phil Schuster, created that kind of narrate the story of the I&M Canal. I can't tell exactly what the story is because again, just heavily graffitied. But when you go to the park, you can walk around, you can touch them. There used to be like panels too that used to have text there, but those were also like kind of, destroyed, and who knows where all that archive is. But as part of our grant, we are working to restore these ceramic friezes, and we did get the blessing of Phil Schuster, who unfortunately did pass away a couple months ago. Yeah, we did get his blessing to do that. So as part of the grant, we'll be restoring these ceramic friezes, kind of fixing the narratives to reflect the current state of the communities today, and hoping to incorporate, a little bit more art, mosaics or something, that brings more, light to this park. Also, fun fact, these ceramic friezes, as you walk down them, are kind of supposed to like, I don't know how to say the word, but it's kind of like you're floating down the canal yourself. as you walk down them. That's what Phil Schuster kind of made this, like, why he made it like such a straight, you know, like hard line down the park. But as you can see in recent years, the park has just suffered from heavy graffiti, and it's just, you know, not taken care of. You know, the fences along the river are also like broken. There's like a tree that has like a big like fire hole in it. There's a lot of litter that accumulates at this park. And it just really highlights the need for ongoing care and attention, because we need to preserve this park's historical, you know, significance. You know, the communities that are established around the community now were very important, you know, in the growth of Chicago. This was very, you know, this point was very important for the growth of Chicago. And even now, there's a lot of Latina working class people that, establishments, you know, like there's a lot of workers that hang out around from Anthony Marino, and I know my neighbors work at Anthony Marino. There's a lot of Spanish speaking workers that work at Kugel Foods, at the a lot of workers that work at the UPS that basically all hang around these parks, but these parks are just so neglected. You know, they don't really have a space to go and enjoy the river and their green space. It's also, there's not a lot of shade as well here at this park. So if you come on a really hot summer day, you're gonna overheat really fast. So next slide. So this is the site plan we submitted as part of our grant. So what we want is to basically restore this main path. We want to restore the public art. We want to create a gathering space with shade, and that has a really nice view of the city skyline as well. Plant more trees, more native plants, and basically just also kind of promote more utilization of the park as well. We want more people to come out and enjoy this space, know that it's there to come out to reconnect with the Chicago River, change the narrative of our river around this area, right? Because it's called Bubbly Creek, it's called the canal. Just not, you know, very positive terms. And also just kind of make this a more vibrant, you know, cultural space that kind of reflects, you know, the communities that live around it. And instill a more sense of, you know, collective ownership, increase, you know, stewardship around this park. And provide more benefits, you know, to the residents and the workers and frequent users of this space. Like every time I go to that park, like there's people fishing there, families fish there, a lot of like Latino and Black families fish there. And just for the space to be neglected makes me so angry. So this is just one of the parks. On the other side of the park as well as Canal Port Riverwalk Park, which I forgot to include a picture of, but there's also a really nice art piece that was installed there by artists Delilah Salgado and Cynthia Weiss, and myself as part of Earth Art Chicago, another grant that we applied for. And that art piece is actually, I wanted the art piece placed there because of Sims Metals, because of Damon Silos, to kind of bring more awareness to these parks, and bring more, you know, and also kind of use it as a space to kind of talk about these issues, right? Talk about climate issues, talk about environmental justice issues. Now the project with Canal Origins Park continues kind of that first project. So, you know, this project is also going to be another way to talk about the site, talk about the issues with the site, talk about, you know, why is Sims Metals operating here on, you know, not really regulated, you know, spraying emissions everywhere, when, you know, when there's, you know, this is a park, this is a public park. So we increase, you know, the presence of, you know, us at these parks, more community members, you know, advocate for you know, bike paths, advocate for connectivity of these parks too, which is another issue. You know, we have like more claim of the land and more say of the land. So yeah, and after completing this project, we kind of plan to implement, you know, an art and nature program at the park. to, kind of continue bringing people to these parks and promoting creativity as well, right? And more environmental awareness in the community. So I'm just gonna wrap up my presentation really quick with, call to action. So PERRO, we just started having monthly meetings. Our first one was October 10th. And this is kind of, for a way to invite community members to participate in our open meetings and discuss, right, what concerns do you have regarding environmental issues? If you live in Pilsen, even if you don't, we still encourage you to come out. Any ideas for new initiatives or improvements? Because again, we're a volunteer grassroots org, so we're, volunteers can just come in and join. You're not, bound to all the meetings. Just come out, voice your ideas for new initiatives or any improvements, and just plug in, because we have a lot of initiatives that we're kind of getting involved in, and we would love to have a lot more volunteers. And also, as I talked about, submitting a public comment can also help. So the final comment period for the SIMS permit application goes until November 7th. That is a typo. Pretty sure that's 2024. So November 7th of this year. And we asked that the community kind of weigh in on this permit application. I believe it is the last opportunity to publicly comment on SIMS Metals permit application. If you need a public comment template, you can email us or check our social media soon for any resources that we will share. I definitely encourage you all, if you haven't, to register for updates that are kind of sent out by CDPH to kind of inform the community about any local issues that are happening, like demolitions, permit applications. I know that PERRO just got one around, it's like this company called RR & Co. that's located on Blue Island as well. They're actually a chemical cleaning company, and they're applying for I think kind of like a storage permit or something. So it's just like a way to stay up to date on these issues. And it's through SurveyMonkey too. And yeah, I'll open it up now for questions. If anybody has any.
Yeah, thank you. Here, I can facilitate the Q&A for you, Citlalli, so you don't have to worry about it. But hi everyone, my name is Nat, and I'm the public program coordinator here at the LCC. And like Citlalli said, we're now going to be transitioning into our Q&A section. And so again, thank you so much. That was super incredible. We're actually going to start off with our student panelists who are in Rosa's class. And so I think I saw Jimena with her hand raised. But if for everyone else who's joining us, please feel free to add any thoughts or questions you want to share with the presenter via chat or the Q&A feature. And then from there, I'll be able to call on folks. And then if you want, Jimena, feel free to start us off.
Okay. Hi. First of all, great presentation. Thank you so much. Also, I wanted to ask more about green spaces in Pilsen and whether or not you guys have worked to include more, as well as have you guys talked to residents about whether or not they believe that there should be more green spaces in Pilsen or not?
Yeah. So you're asking if we work to increase green spaces and also educating people about the importance of kind of increasing green spaces?
Yeah, and whether or not the residents believe that there should be more or not.
Yeah. Well, I didn't touch on this, but after PERRO kind of pushed for H. Kramer to install their new emission controls after they were found emitting tons of lead into the community. A lot of the public soil remediation efforts also led to increased green spaces in Pilsen. So for example, El Paseo Community Garden. PERRO advocated for the cleanup of some of the land around El Paseo Garden, which kind of also led to the expansion of the El Paseo Garden. Green spaces, when we have some open meetings, people don't directly share concerns with green spaces, but people are aware in the community that we do have lack of green spaces. But part of, you know, with the Green Latinos Project is to bring more awareness to these green spaces and why they're important to have. And yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question fully.
You did, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Citlalli. And now I'm going to pass it over to Violeta.
Hi, Citlalli. Thank you so much for your presentation. Very helpful. I live in McKinley, so I totally live on the Damon Silo side. So it's been really interesting to hear. I actually had a question about when you talked about the SIMS, like the EPA and like them letting you know, like it's not enough impact. How do you all as like an organization and community like tackle that idea of like, this is impacting your community, but it's not enough for it to be like triggered? Like how do you all come together and not like let it get you down?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I guess, yeah, definitely talking it through. You know, we meet bi-weekly. Just even like going through the public comments of, you know, because you can access public comments online on CDPH, like all like the steps that SIMS had to take to the city that requires you know, public comment because they have to do it. It's part of like their community engagement process. Seeing all the community members frustrated about it and the city not taking it seriously, it just, to me, it kind of brings me back to like, you know, why isn't lived experience taken into consideration when making decisions around the permit application? Because right, they're just looking at hard fact like data, like this is what the data tells us, this is fact, but the data can be flawed. And this also brings me to another point I didn't mention, but even with the PRES EPA monitor, we actually just determined that their calculations for the monitor for some of the data was incorrect. And one of our members caught that. And it was showing high levels of certain pollutants that we were raising, you know, we were trying to tell the EPA about like, hey, why is this showing such a high level of manganese and stuff? Why is it, you know, this must be coming from SIMS because SIMS is a known polluter of those emissions. And then after they looked into that data a bit more, they're like, oh, our calculations were completely wrong. So they're giving us wrong data. Another issue with SIMS monitor data is their monitors are basically from an independent company called Trinity Consultants, but then they are also the ones that write SIMS permit applications. So like there's like a really big conflict of interest there. So that's just very worrisome, and it's just like us, like, you know, continuing to email the EPA and push EPA to look into this stuff and highlighting it. But a lot of times it still gets, you know, shoved to the side. It doesn't matter. They don't talk about it, or they give you like a really basic answer. And it is frustrating, but I think just that, you know, coming together and, you know, thinking of other ideas and other ways that we can, you know, still get them to look into this stuff and do inspections and, you know, still asking questions. I think that's really important, is still asking questions to these people, to our regulators, and to our, you know, to the people that also oversee these processes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for that, Citlalli. Now I'm going to pass it over to Ashley.
Hi, Citlalli. Thank you so much for sharing all the information about Pilsen. My question was, are there any health impacts towards the community that have been reported because of all the pollutants? And like, do you think that recording this data and getting people's input on how it has affected them and their health push the CDPH to make more effort to shut down SIMS metals?
Yeah. I think when people submit their public comments, they do talk about health impacts, right? It's hard to correlate, right, SIMS metals emissions to health impacts because there's a lot to consider. right? There's other pollutants in the community that could be present. You can't, it's hard to correlate, the emissions to health impacts. Someone could say, yes, I have a headache or I smell something weird. I mean, Pilsen already has, high rates of asthma and even respiratory issues. Like when we have community meetings, community members will stand up and say, I have asthma. My family has a history of asthma. My family has history of this. And they're like, this is not coincidence. But it's still really hard to correlate, the emissions coming from SIMS to a certain health impact that someone will experience. Like with the fire, the journalist that wrote about it even said that residents were complaining about headaches and nose burning and stuff like that. But it's unfortunate that I have to say that it's true that, it's hard to correlate certain emissions to health impacts that residents experience. And I'm not sure if I answered your full question.
No, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to pass it over to Rachel.
Thanks so much. This has been really great. I want to ask a little bit more about the park, bring us back to that. I noticed that you all got a grant to do all this revitalization, but we have a park district. So could you talk about what support or pushback? Because also it seems like with some of what's going on with Sims that there were parks nearby that perhaps that could be a group that would advocate with you or support you. So could you talk about I'm loving your smile, your relationship with them and how the community maybe responds to wanting to do development that maybe isn't happening with this?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So Chicago Park District, when I approached them about this project, I did get pushback, because they were kind of like, why are we just hearing about this? It wasn't like, woo, you guys are raising money to help us develop our parks. There is definitely pushback because Chicago Park District owns that property. And there's still a lot of like, bureaucracy because like some parks have park advisory councils, and these parks, which are called South Branch parks because they're along the South Branch of the Chicago River, have a park advisory council. And before we submitted the application, we wanted to get letters of support, and one of the letters of support we wanted was from the South Branch Park Advisory Council, which is also a community-run group. But the community-run group mainly only cares about the developments happening around the boathouse, not anything on the other side of the river. Initially they were on board, but then, we did end up getting a lot of support. And then the park district, when we approached them with this idea, which I kind of emailed some context I had from my past project, we're like, you need to start from the South Branch Park first and then present to them. But then it took like forever to get a meeting with all of them because you need all of them there to have them, go through their presentation. And then they were kind of a little bit hostile. And then it took me 2 months to hear back from them about, okay, well, we're gonna schedule a meeting with all the other departments. So it's been a little like weird, a little bit hostile. And I think it's, because of the way I kind of also frame my application, like, oh, these parks are so, disinvested in, they're so neglected. Communities of color live around this area. And I think they kind of maybe got a little like, oh, you're gonna make us look bad. But it's not about that, either. But definitely as a community group, yeah, definitely got some pushback on that. I felt like if I were disguised, as like a millionaire, like a wealthy person, a wealthy org foundation, they'd be like, welcome you with open arms. Because, it's coming from, PERRO. I did get a little pushback initially. So, and that was kind of discouraging because, as a community resident, I didn't feel like I was doing anything bad, I applied for this grant, this money, because I wanted to improve a green space that's really near and dear to my heart. And to other people too, not just me. There's a lot of stakeholders around this area that want to see improvements of these parks and feel like reclaiming these spaces, is a way to increase our presence and also let these polluters know, like, hey, we're not here to mess around. Like, this is our land. And yeah, so that's a little bit about that.
Thank you for that, and thank you for like also like sharing with us, right? Like that kind of contention between like doing the community work and also being a community member, but then still facing pushback even when like, right, like your intentions are to better your community and the folks, right, that you like are neighbors with. And so thank you to all the students who put together those great questions. Now we have a few minutes left, so we're actually going to transition into some of our Q&A from other audience members who came here today. And so the first question that we're going to start off with is, how are workers of Sim Metals reacting to the growing advocacy to stop the permit renewal? Have you been able to communicate with any of the workers who are working at Sims Metals?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, we haven't. So I just probably want to take you back to one slide too. Is, let me see. This one, because like the right side kind of talks a little bit about some workers. But honestly, I don't think we've gotten a lot of pushback from the workers at Sims Metals. If anything, we're also kind of concerned about the workers at Sims Metals, right? Like, are they even protected from all these emissions? And you know, with all these, you know, new emission controls being installed, what were they being, you know, exposed to? Do they even have proper PPE, you know? If anything, when we do have community meetings, like a lot of more like more higher ups of Sims come out to these meetings. It's not a lot of workers. And actually there was a WBEZ like podcast posted also kind of in response to PERRO's campaign against Sims, of a worker that they're like scrap metal collectors. That's what they are. They're scrap metal collectors. And actually Sims actually says, these are the jobs that we offer your community. They tell you, like, we have 110 Sims Metals employees that work in Pilsen, but what is their job? You know, what do they do? Do they get paid good? You know, is it a good job? They say they're union, but you know, I don't know. But they basically tell us, like, you know, they told us that the workers in our community rely on them to take their scrap metal there and then get paid. So like, to me, that was a little insulting. It's like, that's a job you think is so great that we should protect. So yeah, we haven't directly ever gotten like any emails or been harassed by any workers of Sims or foresees any pushback or anything like that. But yeah, but when they say like we offer your community jobs, it's like, what kind of jobs do you offer community besides having them collect scrap metal from the alleys and taking them to you and then paying them, you know, I don't know how much they get paid for scrap. So that's definitely something that is worth more, you know, looking into as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for providing more of that context. In our last 2 minutes, we're going to take one more question, and then we'll wrap up. And so another question that we had from the audience was, with most of the pollution in Chicago located in our south and southwest and southeast side neighborhoods, where, right, like same as with Pilsen, oftentimes these are working class, low income earners, right, immigrant communities. What impact do you think the increasing gentrification in Pilsen and some of our other Chicago neighborhoods will have on future pollution and where it is placed? Right? Even thinking of like General Iron, right? Like it was in Lincoln Park and like kind of that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's tough to answer. Honestly, with the way that things kind of have been happening, I think, you know, when gentrification does, you know, ramp up more, I would say gentrification is more, you know, ramped up on the east side of Pilsen. And since, you know, Sims Metal is more on the west side of Pilsen, it hasn't gentrified that quickly, but it is still a little bit gentrified. You know, and also being careful too with our intentions with Canal Origins Park, right? Because as we also develop this park and make it, you know, invest in it and make it look nicer and all this stuff, there's also concern for green gentrification. So with, with General Iron too, right? That was a predominantly white neighborhood. They had more stricter environmental regulations that resulted in, the closure of General Iron. And it could happen here too, right? As, unfortunately, once Pilsen, hopefully it doesn't happen, rapidly gentrifies, it could also happen too, right? With, more environmental regulations, more strict enforcement, for the majority, white populations. I mean, even with McKinley Park, this is actually like a backwards concept because at Matt Asphalt, McKinley Park was predominantly white. Now it's predominantly Hispanic, around 60% or more is predominantly Hispanic. And then Matt Asphalt comes into the picture in 2018, which plants itself in McKinley Park. No questions. Why did that happen? Why did it not happen when it was predominantly white, but now when it's predominantly Hispanic, Matt Asphalt just comes in, no questions asked.
No, thank you. That really, I feel like that last part really resonated, right? We've had Alfredo come in from Neighbors for Environmental Justice. And so those things are all really prominent in the conversations that we've been having here at the LCC. And so we are at time. So thank you so much, Citlalli, for sharing about PERRO and then also talking us through Sims Metal. A virtual round of applause for your great presentation. And while this brings our program to a close, we hope that you can join us at our next virtual Climates of Inequality program happening on Wednesday, November 19th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And that's actually our final Climates of Inequality presentation for this semester. We're going to be joined by Michael Mendez, who's actually going to be joining us from the University of California, Irvine. And there he's an assistant professor in the School of Social Ecology. Well, he'll be talking a little bit about farm workers here in the United States and California specifically. And so we hope to see you there. We're going to drop the information in the chat so that you all can kind of see our upcoming public programs. And again, thank you so much, Citlalli. And we hope to see you all there next time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.